Hello everyone, and thank you for coming back to the channel. In today's episode, we're following a very special love journey between Diem and CEO Toan. Their meeting wasn't loud or forced. Diem chose to approach him slowly, sitting beside him, speaking in the simplest, most genuine way. A gentle kiss on the cheek, a small fire glowing nearby, the two of them roasting corn together. And the moment Diem rested her head on Toan's shoulder, all of it helped calm the fear inside him, even though his memories still hadn't returned. From that quiet sense of peace, a big decision was made. Without needing a perfect past or full memories, Toan chose Diem. He chose to stay by her side. And then in the simple setting of the countryside, a modest yet deeply emotional wedding took place, a wedding built not on memories, but on trust and companionship. Will CEO Toan's memories ever come back? And what will married life look like when everything begins from zero? Stay with us until the end to find out. If you enjoy gentle healing love stories like this one, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episodes. Now, let's begin the story. That afternoon, after finishing her corn stall at the market, Diem picked out a few fresh ears of corn, wrapped them carefully, and followed the familiar path leading to the old woman's house. It was a small gift, but also a simple excuse to check on Toan. No rush, no expectations, just wanting to see that he was safe and well. When she arrived, the little house was quiet. She called out softly a few times, but neither the old woman nor Toan was there. The front yard was empty, with only a few farming tools leaning against the wall. Diem hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. By the fireplace, the ashes had gone cold, with only a faint smell of smoke left from the morning. She set the corn down, sat by the hearth, hugged her knees, and waited patiently. Not long after, the sound of footsteps and quiet voices came from the lane. Toan and the old woman were returning from the farm. When she saw Diem, the old woman's face immediately lit up, a warm smile spreading across her aged features. "You came by to visit?" she asked gently. Diem stood up and greeted her politely. "Yes, I brought you some corn." The old woman happily invited her to sit. Toan sat down as well, though his eyes still held a sense of uncertainty and caution, as if he wasn't yet used to the presence of this young woman. Diem didn't move any closer. She stayed where she was, keeping just enough distance so he wouldn't feel pressured. "I'll go get some water," the old woman said, then walked inside. The small house fell quiet. The three of them sat there, each with their own rhythm of breathing. Yet the atmosphere softened, as if simply being together was enough to make that afternoon feel warmer. Diem sat quietly for a moment, then chose to speak first. Her voice wasn't rushed or shaky, just calm, steady, and sincere. "Grandma, there's something I want to say," she said, turning to the old woman first, as if asking for permission. "I want Toan to come live with me." Toan flinched slightly. He looked up at her, his eyes still cautious. Diem didn't look at him right away. Instead, she continued speaking to the old woman, her voice clearer now. "Before all this, Toan was a CEO. He's not used to, nor should he have to do such heavy work." She paused briefly, then went on, not hiding the truth. "Even though right now, neither of us has a home, I still want to rent a small place with him and start a new life together." The old woman listened, her hands resting on her knees. Her expression slowly softened. "I think that's a good idea," she said. "Knowing there's someone by his side taking care of him puts my mind at ease." She turned to Toan, her voice lower but full of affection. "My child, I'm old now. I can't stay with you forever. Go with lytudiem. Build a home together. And one day, have a proper wedding. That would make me very happy." Toan lowered his head. Her words weighed heavily on his heart. He was still afraid of leaving what felt familiar, afraid of stepping into a life he didn't yet understand. But this time, he didn't react strongly. He stayed silent, sitting there, listening. Only then did lytudiem turn to him. "I'm not forcing you," she said softly. "I'm just asking you to give me a chance to be by your side." Toan looked at her. His eyes were still confused, but more open than before. He didn't answer right away, but he didn't stand up and walk away either. It was a small sign, but enough to ease lytudiem's heart. She turned back to the old woman and bowed deeply. "Thank you," she said, her voice catching. "If it weren't for you, there wouldn't be the Toan we see today." The old woman smiled and gently patted her hand. "I only did what I should have done." Then she stood up, picked up the water jug, and went inside, leaving the two of them some private space. In the small house, only lytudiem and Toan remained sitting across from each other, wrapped in a gentle silence where a big decision was slowly taking shape, not through pressure, but through trust and quiet love. Lytudiem moved a little closer to Toan, inch by inch, very slowly, as if she feared that even the slightest rush might make him pull away. When the distance between them was close enough to feel each other's breath, she sat down beside him. She didn't reach out or touch him right away, letting her presence become familiar first. "Even if you don't remember anything," lytudiem said softly, her voice low and warm, "all I need is for you to stay by my side. I'll do everything I can to help you slowly get your memories back. Not today, not even tomorrow." Toan remained silent. His eyes wavered, caught between fear and a feeling he couldn't quite name. "We'll be a family," she continued without pressure. "A small home, a peaceful life. One day we'll get married, have children. We don't need anything more than that." Her words made Toan hesitate. He lowered his head, his hands gently clasped together. He still didn't fully believe it, but he no longer resisted the way he once had. Lytudiem looked at him and smiled softly. "I'll go get the corn," she said. "Let's roast it together." She leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on his cheek. It was light without expectation, more like a promise. Toan froze for a moment, then slowly let out a breath. Outside in the yard, a fire was lit. The two of them sat side by side, roasting corn as the firelight cast a warm glow on their faces. The smell of cooked corn filled the late afternoon air. Lytudiem rested her head on Toan's shoulder naturally, without hesitation. Toan didn't move away. He stayed still, letting the moment pass. Inside him, his memories were still unclear, but a very real sense of peace was quietly taking shape, as if maybe just this was already enough for a new beginning. As the afternoon light slowly faded behind the bamboo grove at the edge of the village, a wedding began, simple, rustic, yet unexpectedly warm. There were no grand decorations, No white wedding gown, no bright stage lights. This was the wedding of Toan and Lytudiem, built from the simplest things: love, patience, and a kind of faith that never left. The front yard of the small house had been neatly cleaned. Old tarps were stretched overhead, and tables and chairs borrowed from neighbors were lined up carefully. At the bamboo gate, a piece of red cloth was tied by hand, the word happiness, written slightly crooked, but full of care. The scent of wildflowers, pomelo leaves, and dry straw mixed in the evening breeze, creating an atmosphere that felt both familiar and quietly sacred. Lytudiem stood in the small room at the back of the house. She wasn't wearing a white wedding dress, just a simple, light cream dress. Her hair was neatly tied up, with a small wildflower tucked in. She looked at herself in the old mirror, her hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from emotion. She had never imagined that after everything she had been through, this day would arrive so gently. Outside, Toan stood beside the old woman. He wore a simple white shirt, dark pants, and an old pair of shoes that had been carefully cleaned. He looked around his eyes, still carrying a hint of uncertainty. To him, everything felt like a dream he didn't yet know how to name. He hadn't recovered his memories, didn't fully understand the meaning of a wedding, but he knew one thing clearly: today, he didn't want to leave this place. The old woman stood next to him, adjusting his collar with trembling hands. "Today, you're the groom," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I'm so happy for you." Toan looked at her and nodded. "I don't remember everything he said quietly, but I feel at peace." The old woman smiled, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. "That's enough," she said. When the simple music began, just a few notes from an old instrument, and the clapping of neighbors, Lytudiem stepped out. No one shouted, no one rushed her. People simply stood up and made space. Toan turned around, and his eyes met hers. In that moment, he froze, not because his memories returned, but because his heart recognized something deeply familiar. He didn't remember who she had been in his past, but he knew she was the person whose hand he wanted to hold right now. Lytudiem walked toward him slowly, her eyes never leaving his. When she stood in front of him, the two of them stayed silent for a long moment. No flowery words were spoken, only the sound of the wind, their breathing, and two heartbeats slowly falling into the same rhythm. "Are you scared?" she asked softly. Toan thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No. With you, I'm not scared." Her eyes turned red at his answer. She nodded and smiled, as if all the waiting she had endured had finally been answered. The wedding ceremony was simple. Elders from the village took turns offering their blessings. No one mentioned Toan's past. No one asked whether he remembered or not. Everyone understood today belonged to the present. When asked whether he agreed to become husband and wife, Toan hesitated briefly. Not because he was unsure, but because he wanted to be certain. He turned to Lytudiem, his expression serious. "If I never get my memories back," he asked, "will you regret this?" Lytudiem shook her head immediately without hesitation. "No, I'm marrying you because you are, you not because of your memories." Toan nodded. "Then I agree." Applause broke out, not loud but warm. The old woman wiped her tears, smiling, even as her shoulders trembled. Neighbors looked at one another, their hearts feeling lighter. When Toan and Lytudiem held hands, it wasn't the handhold of two people who had already lived a full life together. It was the handhold of two people choosing to begin again from zero. The wedding meal followed right after. Simple countryside dishes, but filled with laughter. Toan sat beside lytudiem occasionally, turning to look at her as if to make sure she was still there. She always was, never letting go of his hand for long. As night fell, the guests slowly left. Only a few close people remained, along with the old woman. The moon rose high, casting a soft silver light across the yard. Toan and lytudiem sat side by side on the front steps. She leaned her head on his shoulder, just like the afternoon they roasted corn together. He didn't pull away. Instead, he gently leaned toward her, letting her rest more comfortably. "Today, what day is it?" he asked. "The day we became a family," she replied. He stayed quiet for a moment, then spoke very softly. "I don't remember what I may have promised you before, but from today on, I won't leave you alone." Lytudiem closed her eyes and smiled. "That's enough." From a distance, the old woman watched them, her gaze gentle. She knew that maybe one day Toan would remember, or maybe he wouldn't. But it no longer mattered. Their love wasn't built on memories, but on the choice to stay. That night, in the small house, a wedding took place, not loud, not glamorous, but it was the wedding of two people who had walked through loss, confusion, and fear, only to find each other once again. No need for a perfect past, no need for a certain future. Only this present moment, Toan and lytudiem together. The wedding continued as night fully settled in. Around the small house, everything was bathed in warm yellow light, while a thin crescent moon hung quietly above. A gentle breeze passed through carrying the scent of pomelo leaves and lingering kitchen smoke from the afternoon. The neighbors weren't in a hurry to leave. Everyone wanted to stay just a little longer, as if walking away might make this moment of happiness disappear. The soft clinking of bowls and cups mixed with low, steady chatter. There was no loud music, just a few villagers casually singing familiar folk songs. Their voices were simple, sometimes off-key, sometimes out of rhythm, but somehow they warmed the heart in a way nothing polished ever could. Toan sat beside lytudiem, his hand still holding hers, as if letting go for even a second might cause her to vanish. Every now and then, he turned to look at her. His eyes still held traces of uncertainty, but the fear was gone. To him, this night felt like a strange dream. Everything was new, yet the sense of safety felt real. "Are you tired?" Toan asked softly. Lytudiem shook her head and smiled. "No, I just feel at peace." She leaned a little closer to him. The movement was so natural that Toan didn't even have time to think. He simply followed his instinct and stayed still, letting her rest against his shoulder. In that moment, his heart softened, as if this place right here was exactly where he belonged. On the other side of the yard, the old woman sat with a few elders from the village. She didn't say much, only quietly watched the young couple. The worry that once filled her eyes was gone, replaced by a rare sense of calm. She knew that from this moment on, Toan had a new path, to walk one where he was no longer alone. "That girl is good," a neighbor whispered to her. "Yes." The old woman nodded. "She truly loves him." As the celebration neared its end, one of the villagers stood up and raised a cup of tea instead of wine. We don't have anything fancy today, he said aloud, but we have plenty of heart. I hope that no matter what happens in the future, the two of you will never let go of each other. Applause followed, not loud, but long and steady. Hearing those words, something stirred inside Toan. He didn't fully understand what marriage meant, nor could he remember what promises he might have made in the past. But he knew this much: he was being chosen, and he was choosing too. As the guests gradually left the yard, grew quieter. Only a few wooden chairs remained, and a handful of hanging lights swayed gently in the wind. Lytudiem stood up to start cleaning, but Toan lightly held her hand. "Let me help," he said. She looked at him surprised for a moment, then nodded. The two of them cleaned up together without saying much. Simple tasks, stacking chairs, gathering dishes, meant something very different to Toan. For the first time, he felt like he was building something, not just getting through another day. When everything was tidied up, Lytudiem led Toan to the back of the house, where a small yard opened toward the pomelo garden. The moon was brighter now, its silver light spreading across the leaves, creating a scene that felt deeply peaceful. "Were you scared today?" she asked softly. Toan thought for a long time. "At first, yes," he answered honestly. "But when you held my hand, I forgot that I was scared." Lytudiem smiled, her eyes glistening slightly. "I was scared too," she admitted, "but I was more afraid of losing you." Toan turned to look at her. For a brief second, something faint passed through his mind, a familiar smile, a promise he couldn't quite remember. A dull ache touched his head, not sharp, not overwhelming. He frowned slightly and lifted a hand to his forehead. "Does your head hurt again?" Lytudiem asked, worried. He shook his head and lowered his hand. "It's okay. This time, I don't want to run." Those words caught in Lytudiem's throat. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, not quickly, but slowly, giving him time to get used to the warmth. Toan hesitated for a single breath, then gently wrapped his arms around her in return. "I don't remember," he said quietly, "but I know. I want to keep you." "That's enough," she replied. They stood there for a long time until the night air grew cool. Lytudiem then guided Toan back inside. The small room had been prepared for them. No elaborate decorations, just a wooden bed, a new blanket, and a small oil lamp glowing softly in the corner. Toan stood at the doorway, a little unsure. "What should I do?" he asked. Lytudiem stepped closer and placed her hand over his. "You don't need to do anything. Just stay here." She led him to sit on the edge of the bed. They sat side by side, their shoulders touching. The room was so quiet that they could hear each other breathing. "If I wake up tomorrow and forget everything about today," Toan said, "will you be sad?" Lytudiem shook her head. "I'll tell you again, as many times as it takes." Toan smiled, a rare smile, but a real one. "Then I feel at ease." That night, Toan lay beside Lytudiem. He didn't hold her tightly, only rested his hand on the edge of the blanket where her hand was. Sleep came slowly, without the broken nightmares he once had. In his dreams, he saw a narrow path, a flickering fire, and a woman sitting there waiting for him to return. The next morning, when the first sunlight slipped through the door, Toan opened his eyes. He turned his head and saw Lytudiem still sleeping, her face peaceful. In that moment, he didn't remember who he was, But he knew one thing clearly. This woman was his wife. He didn't need memories to understand that. He only needed his heart beating softly but steady. And so, the wedding of Toan and Lytudiem was more than a ceremony. It was the beginning of a new life, one where love didn't depend on a lost past, but was built day by day through patience, understanding, and the choice to stay together. The wedding still wasn't over. As the night grew deeper, the yard became less crowded, but the atmosphere felt warmer and more intimate in a very special way. The early excitement had faded, replaced by quiet moments where every look, every small gesture carried real meaning. Inside the main room, the old woman lit another oil lamp. The soft yellow light fell on the old walls, casting the shadows of Toan and Lytudiem sitting side by side. She slowly walked over, holding a small wooden box, its corners worn with age. "I don't have anything valuable," she said, her voice trembling. "Just this. And I want to give it to the two of you." She opened the box. Inside was a pair of old silver rings dulled by time. "They were your grandfather's, and mine," she continued. "Not pretty, but we lived our whole lives together with them." Lytudiem lowered her head, her hands shaking slightly as she accepted the box. She looked at Toan as if asking for his consent. Toan didn't say anything. He simply nodded very gently. The old woman took Toan's hand first. "Put it on your wife's finger." Toan looked nervous. His fingers trembled as he held the ring. He didn't know the ritual, and he didn't remember if he had ever done this before. But when the ring touched Lytudiem's hand, his heart tightened slightly, a feeling that was real and close, as if this was something he had been waiting for. Lytudiem placed the ring on Toan's finger slowly and carefully. When she finished, she held his hand tightly. "That's enough," she whispered. The old woman looked at their hands, intertwined tears quietly falling. "From now on, you are husband and wife," she said. "If life is hard, you face it together. If there is joy, you share it together." Outside in the yard, a few neighbors who hadn't left yet stood watching. No one said anything, but everyone felt the simple sacredness of the moment. After that, everyone gathered around the fire. Roasted corn and sweet potatoes were brought out. It wasn't a fancy wedding feast, but the laughter grew louder. Some people told old village stories. Others teased Toan, saying he was the gentlest groom they had ever seen. Toan listened. He didn't understand everything, but he laughed along. At first his smile was awkward, then it slowly became natural. Every time he smiled, Lytudiem looked at him just a little longer, as if trying to carve this image into her heart. One of the elders joked, "So, groom, how long have you remembered the bride?" Toan hesitated. The yard fell quiet for a moment. Lytudiem gently squeezed his hand, as if to say it was okay. Toan took a deep breath. "I don't remember," he said honestly. "But I know. I want to be with her." That answer made everyone smile warmly. "That's all that matters," someone said out loud. Lytudiem lowered her head, tears falling onto the back of Toan's hand. He felt it and turned to look at her. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked softly. She shook her head, smiling through tears. "No, you said it perfectly." When the fire burned down to glowing embers, the guests slowly left. The old woman walked each person out, thanking them again and again. In the end, only 3 people remained in the yard: the old woman, Toan and Diem. She looked at the two young people in front of her and spoke slowly. I'm very happy today, but tomorrow you'll need to think about the future. She turned to Toan. Go live with your wife. Live well. Don't worry about me. Toan looked at her, his eyes uncertain. Can I come back to visit you? Of course, she smiled. I'll still be here. Diem stepped forward and bowed deeply. Thank you for everything. The old woman held her hand and patted it gently. Take good care of the boy. He's been lost for long enough. That night in the small room, Toan and Diem sat side by side on the bed. The air felt a little awkward, but not distant. Toan looked around, then looked at her. So, we're husband and wife now, he asked. Diem nodded. Yes. He thought for a moment, then spoke slowly. I don't know how to be a husband. She smiled. That's okay. I'm still learning how to be a wife, too. Her answer made Toan let out a quiet breath of relief. He lay down and turned toward her. After a while, he spoke softly. If I forget tomorrow, please remind me. I will, she replied. Every day, Toan closed his eyes. In the darkness, his hand reached for hers and held on. The gesture was clumsy, but real. Outside, the moon rose high, lighting up the small roof where a simple yet complete wedding had just taken place. There were no grand vows, no complete memories, but there was a quiet promise to stay, no matter how many times they might have to begin again. And so, the wedding of Toan and Diem didn't last just one evening. It continued in the days that followed in shared meals, in the moments when Toan would ask again, "Who are you?" And in the way Diem always answered, without ever growing tired, "I'm your wife." That was the true wedding, a wedding that lasted a lifetime,